The Secret of the Abandoned Lighthouse. Once upon a time, in a small seaside village, there was an old lighthouse that stood alone on the cliff. Everyone in the village believed it was haunted. No one dared to go near it after sunset. But one day, a curious teenager named Emily decided to explore the lighthouse. She had always been fascinated by the sea, and the stories her grandfather used to tell her about the lighthouse keeper who disappeared mysteriously many years ago. Emily packed a flashlight, a notebook, and a sandwich. She told her mom she would be at her friend's house and set off toward the cliff just before evening. The sun was low in the sky, painting the waves in gold and orange. As she reached the lighthouse, the wind howled louder. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, dust covered everything. Spider webs hung like curtains, and the smell of the sea filled the air. She climbed the spiral staircase carefully, each step echoing through the stone walls. At the top, she found the lantern room, and beside it, a small wooden chest. With trembling hands, Emily opened it. Inside were old papers, a photograph of a man with kind eyes, and a journal. She sat on the floor and began to read. The journal belonged to the lighthouse keeper, Thomas Gray. He wrote about storms, ships, and one strange night when he saw a mysterious boat without sails or sound. On the last page he wrote, "If anyone finds this, know that I followed the ship. It called to me." Suddenly Emily felt a cold breeze. She turned and saw a shadow by the door. Her heart pounded, but it was only the wind moving an old coat. She smiled nervously, put the journal in her bag, and left the lighthouse. Back home, Emily shared the journal with her grandfather. His eyes filled with tears. "That's him," he whispered, pointing to the photo. "Thomas Gray was my father." From that day on, the lighthouse wasn't just a scary place. It was a place of mystery and memory. Emily visited often, keeping it clean and telling its story to anyone who would listen. And sometimes, when the night was quiet, she thought she saw a light in the tower, shining over the sea. Weeks passed and Emily became known as the girl who found the lighthouse journal. The local newspaper even published her story, and tourists started visiting the village, curious about the mystery. The mayor asked Emily to help organize a small exhibit in the town hall, using the journal and the photograph. One afternoon, as she was arranging the old papers, a stranger arrived. He was a tall man with grey hair and a sea-worn face. He introduced himself as Captain Wallace, a retired sailor. He had read about the journal and came to share his own memory. "I saw that ghost ship," he said, 30 years ago during a storm. It glided over the water without a sound. I never forgot it." Emily listened with wide eyes. The story matched the journal exactly. There had to be something more. That night, she returned to the lighthouse, hoping to see the ship for herself. Hours passed in silence. Then, just past midnight, a light appeared on the horizon. It wasn't a boat's usual light. It shimmered like a star, moving slowly. Emily climbed to the top of the tower and watched. The ship came closer, and for a moment, she thought she saw a man standing on its deck, waving. She waved back instinctively. Then, just as silently as it appeared, the ship vanished into the mist. The next morning, she told her grandfather. He held her hand gently and said, "Some things are not meant to be solved, only witnessed." Emily continued to care for the lighthouse, keeping the journal safe. She began writing her own entries, adding her story to Thomas Gray's legacy. Tourists kept coming, But the lighthouse became more than a curiosity. It became a place of memory and meaning. Children would sit around Emily as she read aloud from the journal. Older villagers brought their own stories about the sea. Some even claimed they, too, had seen a strange light on the water. One stormy night, Emily stayed in the lighthouse. Thunder roared and waves crashed below. Suddenly, the beacon turned on by itself. She ran to the lantern room, heart racing. Inside stood a glowing figure. It was Thomas Gray. His face was calm. He pointed out to sea, smiled, and faded into light. Emily knew then. The lighthouse was never haunted. It was waiting for someone to listen, to remember, to keep its light alive. From that day forward, Emily became the new keeper of the lighthouse. Not because she had to, but because she believed in its story, in its soul, and in the power of light over darkness. Months passed since Emily became the new lighthouse keeper. She took care of the building, cleaned the windows, painted the walls, and made sure the light always worked. But something inside her told her the story was not finished yet. One day, while organizing old maps in the lighthouse basement, Emily found a hidden drawer behind a shelf. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed to the next keeper. With careful hands, she opened it and found a letter written in beautiful handwriting. To the one who carries the light. If you are reading this, then the lighthouse has chosen you. There will be a time when the sea calls again. You must follow the signs, trust the wind, and protect the truth. The ship will return when the stars align. T.G. Emily stared at the letter. What did it mean? What truth was she supposed to protect? She showed the letter to her grandfather. He became quiet. There are stories, he said slowly, about a ship that appears when danger is near. Some say it carries souls, others say it carries messages. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She walked to the lighthouse and climbed to the top. She lit the beacon and stared into the dark sea. Suddenly, a strange pattern of lights flashed on the water. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Emily gasped. That's SOS, she whispered. Someone was calling for help. Without thinking, she grabbed her radio and called the Coast Guard. They found a small fishing boat lost in heavy fog, just miles from the rocks below the lighthouse. The signal had saved them. The next morning, the fisherman came to thank Emily. We saw a light in the fog, he said, and a ship, a tall one. But it disappeared. Emily smiled. She knew what they had seen. The ghost ship hadn't come to scare it, had come to warn. That night she wrote in her journal, "The lighthouse is more than light and stone. It's a voice, a memory, a guide. I don't just keep it, I listen to it." Years later, people still came to the village to hear the story of the girl who spoke to a ghost ship. But to Emily, it was never about ghosts or fame. It was about the promise she made to keep the light on for those who are lost, and to never stop listening to the sea. The storm had passed, but the lighthouse remained full of questions. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the letter she found in the hidden drawer. What truth was she supposed to protect? What did the stars align mean? One quiet morning, while clearing stones near the base of the lighthouse, Emily noticed something odd. One of the stones on the ground was loose, and unlike the others, it had a strange symbol carved into it, a circle with a small dot in the center. Curious, she lifted the stone and found a small metal box beneath it. Inside was a very old map, rolled and tied with a red ribbon. She carefully opened it and saw a hand-drawn coastline. The map showed the lighthouse, but also a hidden path marked with stars, leading into the forest behind the cliff. At the bottom of the map, in faded ink, it read, "Follow the stars. Where the land ends, the light begins." That same evening, just after sunset, Emily packed a flashlight, the map, and her journal. She followed the path into the forest, counting each symbol on the trees that matched the map. After nearly an hour, she reached the hidden cove surrounded by rocks. There, half buried in the sand, was the entrance to a cave. Inside the cave, the air was cold and quiet. Strange drawings covered the walls, images of lighthouses, ships, stars, and waves. At the very end of the tunnel, there was a stone altar with something resting on top. A crystal shaped like a lighthouse beacon. As she picked it up, the cave lit with a soft blue glow. The drawings on the wall began to shimmer. In that moment, Emily heard a voice not from outside, but from within. "You carry the light now. This place remembers those who listen. Use the beacon when the sea forgets the sky." Startled but calm, Emily placed the crystal in her backpack and returned to the lighthouse. She didn't know exactly what she had found, but she knew one thing. It was ancient, powerful, and somehow alive. That night, she placed the crystal beside the real lighthouse lamp. It didn't shine, but she had a feeling that one day, when it was truly needed, it would. And in her journal she wrote, "The lighthouse is not just a guide, it's a guardian. The sea has secrets, and I've just opened one." Days turned into weeks since Emily discovered the crystal beacon in the cave. Though she didn't understand its full purpose, she felt a deeper connection to the sea, the lighthouse, and the stories whispered by the wind. One evening, as the sky turned violet and the waves calmed, Emily heard a low hum coming from the lantern room. She rushed to the top of the lighthouse. The crystal she had placed beside the lamp was glowing softly like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the light expanded, casting a beam not across the ocean, but straight up into the sky. The stars above flickered. Then, one by one, they began to shift position, forming the same symbol Emily had seen on the stone, the circle with a dot. She stood in awe, and then the sea answered. A deep vibration moved through the ground. In the distance, the surface of the ocean began to swirl, and from the center of the spiral, an island slowly rose, dark and covered in moss. An island that had not been there before. The villagers saw it too. People gathered along the shore, pointing, whispering. The next morning, Emily received a letter delivered by hand. It was from a woman named Dr. Claire Holloway, an archaeologist who had been studying maritime legends. She had read about Emily's discoveries in the local paper and asked to meet. When they met, Dr. Holloway stared at Emily with intense curiosity. "Do you know what you've activated?" she asked. "This lighthouse wasn't built just to protect ships. It was built on purpose, at a specific point of energy. What you found, the crystal, is a key." Emily showed her the map and the journal. The archaeologist studied the pages and said quietly, "That island is called Elaris in old sea tales. It only appears when someone chosen by the light awakens the memory of the sea." Together, they decided to explore the island. As they arrived by boat, the island seemed to shimmer under the morning sun. There were old ruins, half-buried towers, and strange symbols carved into stone. In the center of it all stood a circular stone platform with 7 empty slots. one of which matched the size and shape of the crystal Emily had found. Emily placed it in the first slot. The platform lit up briefly, then went silent again. "There are 6 more," Dr. Holloway said, turning to Emily. "And I think you're meant to find them." Emily wrote in her journal that night, "The lighthouse led me here. The sea opened its secrets. I used to think I was just a keeper of stories. But now I see. I'm part of one." The island of Alaris had revealed itself, and with it, a new mission. 6 more crystals were hidden somewhere in the world, waiting to be found. Each one belonged to a forgotten lighthouse, a place where light once stood against darkness. Emily returned home with Dr. Holloway, but her heart was already far away. That night, she dreamed of stormy oceans, ruined towers, and distant voices whispering, "The light remembers, but only if it is found." The next morning, the 2 of them examined the map again. When held near the glowing crystal, it changed. 6 small points lit up on the edges of the paper, 6 hidden lighthouses across the world. Some were on cliffs, some in frozen lands, one deep in a jungle. Most had been forgotten for decades. Dr. Holloway prepared the research, and Emily packed for her first destination. Isle of Moura, a small rocky island off the coast of Scotland, home to a ruined lighthouse buried in mist. Isle of Moura. As their boat neared the island, dark clouds gathered. The old lighthouse stood broken, covered in vines and shadows. Inside, Emily felt the same strange energy. She climbed the tower carefully. At the very top, hidden behind bricks, was a second crystal blue and cold like ice. The moment she touched it, the fog around the island lifted completely. For the first time in years, the sky above Isle of Moura was clear. The desert flame. The next journey took them to the hot, endless sands of Morocco. A sunken tower known as the Desert Flame had once warned caravans of ancient floods. Emily and Claire dug near a broken foundation. The ground trembled as they uncovered the crystal, this one orange warm to the touch. The desert winds calmed. The locals said, "The land is listening again." Glacier's Eye. Their third trip was to the frozen north, an abandoned lighthouse carved into the side of a glacier in Norway. There, the air was silent, except for the cracking of ice. Emily found the third crystal sealed inside frozen water. She melted it with a lamp, releasing a green shard that pulsed with life. Suddenly, the ice stopped groaning. The glacier settled. The land seemed grateful. By the time Emily returned home, she had 3 crystals glowing beside the original. Each had awakened not only part of the world, but part of her. She looked at the map again. 3 lights remained. That night, a storm shook the coast. The crystal on the lighthouse pulsed, brighter than ever. And then, it happened. A second island rose from the sea. She wrote in her journal, "The world is waking. The light is more than a guide. It's a memory, a force, a promise. And I must finish what Thomas Gray began, the island that shouldn't exist." The storm had passed, but the sea remained unsettled. From the lighthouse, Emily and Dr. Holloway watched as the mist began to clear. And there it was, a new island, larger than Alaris, shaped like a crescent moon, with black cliffs and towers jutting from its center. But this time, something felt different. This island, Claire whispered, wasn't on any map, not even the ancient ones. Emily stared in silence. She could feel the crystals in her pack vibrating faintly, as if they recognized the place. That night, they set sail with a small crew and reached the shore by sunrise. The island was eerily quiet. No birds, no insects. The stones felt warm under their feet, as if they had been recently awakened. In the center of the island, surrounded by a stone circle, stood a tall pillar with 7 crystal-shaped slots identical to the one on Alaris. They inserted the 4 crystals Emily had collected. The pillar lit up, but only halfway. Then, a deep humming echoed across the island, and something began to respond. Suddenly the ground shook. From the shadows emerged a figure, an old man in a dark coat with silver eyes. He introduced himself not with fear, but calmness. "You've come far, Keeper," he said. "That light always awakens darkness. Do you know what you've released?" Emily stepped forward. "I've restored what was forgotten. The lighthouses were built to protect." The man gave a sad smile. "No, the lighthouses were built to seal something away." The man, who called himself Kalen, told a story lost to time. Thousands of years ago, the sea had a memory. A force known as the Deep Voice once rose to flood the earth. 7 guardians, each with a crystal, built towers of light to silence it. But when the guardians disappeared, the lights faded, and the world forgot. Emily's actions had reawakened those ancient lights. But now, the Deep Voice had stirred again. "You have one choice," Kalen said. "Finish your journey, or leave the last crystals hidden. The more you light, the louder it grows." That night, Emily sat alone at the top of the lighthouse on the new island. Wind howled. The crystals glowed quietly beside her. She looked at her journal and wrote, "What if light is not just good? What if it also reveals things best left in the dark? But I believe in truth. I believe in the sea's story, and I believe it chose me for a reason." She made her decision. Emily turned to Claire and Kalen the next morning. "I'm going to finish it. All 7 must be found. Whatever comes next, I'll face it." Kalen nodded. "Then may the sea remember your name." As they sailed back toward the mainland, the map in Emily's hand changed one last time. The final 3 lights burned into the parchment. And far below, in the darkest parts of the ocean, something ancient began to rise. The map now burned with the final 3 lights. Emily felt the weight of the crystals in her pack, but also something heavier doubt. What if Kalen was right? She whispered. What if I'm awakening something we're not meant to face? Back at the mainland, Dr. Holloway began decoding an old sailor's book recovered from the second island. In one passage, written in a language Claire could barely translate, there was a name. Gray. Emily. Claire said slowly, "This isn't just a coincidence. You're connected to the original keepers." Emily froze. "You mean Thomas Gray?" Claire nodded. "He wasn't just a lighthouse keeper. He was the last guardian of the original order, the Circle of Light. And you are his bloodline." Following a clue from the book, they returned to the original abandoned lighthouse, Emily's lighthouse. In the floor beneath the lantern room, covered by a false panel, they discovered a hidden chamber. Inside were carvings, symbols of the 7 crystals, and at the center, a mirror made of black sea glass. When Emily stepped in front of it, her reflection changed, dressed in white robes, holding a glowing staff surrounded by waves. She staggered back. "This is who you are." A voice echoed Kellen's voice, somehow in the room. "You are the last of the line. The sea does not forget its chosen." In the chamber, carved into the stone wall, was a message in ancient script. Claire translated, "When the 7th light is restored, the seal will crack. The sea shall speak, and the sky shall burn. Only the blood of the keeper can command the voice." Emily stared at the writing, heart pounding. "It's not just about gathering the crystals," she said. "I'm the only one who can control what's coming." The first of the last 3 locations was a lighthouse buried in the cliffs of Patagonia, half swallowed by ice. They hiked for days before reaching it. Inside, they found the 5th crystal, this one purple and thrumming with energy. The next stop was a jungle-covered ruin in Cambodia, hidden under vines and guarded by ancient traps. In its heart, the 6th crystal glowed golden, humming like a heartbeat. Now only 1 crystal remained, and it was the most dangerous one of all, marked on the map in a place surrounded by red ink and ancient warnings. The depths. A place under the sea. A place no one had ever returned from. She wrote in her journal that night. "The lighthouse called to me. The sea trusted me. Now I must trust myself. I am not just a keeper of light. I am its heir." The map's final light didn't point to land, or to any known lighthouse. It pulsed in the middle of the ocean, a place called the Black Hollow, an underwater trench feared by sailors for centuries. "No ship sails near it," Claire warned. "Even birds won't fly over it. Legends say it swallows light itself." But Emily didn't hesitate. "If that's where the final crystal is, then that's where I must go." With help from an ocean research team, Emily boarded a deep-sea submersible. Kaylin stayed behind, watching silently from the dock. "Once you pass below the hollow, no signal will reach you," he said. "But the crystal will guide you." As the sub dove beneath the waves, the water grew darker. At 5,000 meters, even the sun gave up. But the crystals in Emily's pack began to glow, pulsing gently, lighting the sub like a lantern. Hours passed. Then suddenly, the trench appeared. The sea floor cracked open like a wound. Black stone, spiral carvings, and enormous ruins lay buried beneath centuries of pressure and time. At the center was a temple, ancient and untouched. Emily exited the sub in a reinforced suit, guided by the light of the crystals. Inside the temple, she found a platform identical to the others, but broken. Hovering above it, untouched by water or time, was the final crystal black with flecks of starlight. The moment Emily touched it, her mind filled with voices. Whispering, crying, calling. "We remember. We are the deep voice. You broke the seal. You carry the light. But you also carry the door." Emily fell to her knees, overwhelmed by visions. The rise of the oceans. The ancient war. Thomas Gray standing at the same altar, sealing the deep voice within the hollow. And then Emily herself, standing alone as the ocean rose around her. She placed the 7th crystal in her suit and returned to the sub. As the engines rose toward the surface, the trench below began to glow. The seal was cracking. The deep voice had awakened. But so had she. Back on the surface, storms formed in the distance. The sky turned green. The sea churned unnaturally. Kaylin looked to the horizon and whispered, "It's time." Emily stepped off the ship, holding all 7 crystals in a satchel across her chest. The next step? She must return to Alaris, to the circle of stone where the final convergence would take place. She looked at Claire, her voice steady. "I opened the gate, but I'm also the key. If the deep voice wants to rise, it'll have to go through me." In her final journal entry before the storm, Emily wrote, "I am the 7th light. I am the keeper of the sea's memory, and I will not let the darkness return unchecked."